Welcome to the Kandid shop. We speaking on things you not. Just press play and let it rock. Hey. Welcome to the Kandid shop. Whoa. Welcome to the Kandid shop. We speaking on things you not. Just press play and let it rock. Hey. Welcome to the Kandid shop. Feel like we going through mad things. Gotta keep it real when they choose not. We gon' talk about it when the news drop. Welcome to the show where you know we don't fake this. Keep your opinion to yourself if it don't make sense.
Hola, podcast family. It's your girl, Candidly Kristen, and this is the Kandid Shop, your number one destination for candid conversations. Tonight, I am super duper excited to be sitting down for a candid chat about learning differences with author, certified grief support specialist, educational therapist, and CEO/founder of Beautiful Minds LLC, Miss Choyce Simmons. Welcome, 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 Choyce, back to the Kandid Shop.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So great to be here.
So, guys, Choyce was one of my guests on a previous episode, actually, the last episode of my last season on grief and grieving. But I really wanted to bring her back for a one on one chat because she also helps families with children that have learning differences, and I love that. Navigate the special education maze to get their children the services and support they deserve. So
Yes.
let's get into it. Now, y'all know I'm a researcher and a stats person, so I got a couple. So here we go. 1 in 5 children in the U.S. have learning and attention issues like dyslexia and ADHD. A third of students with learning differences have repeated a grade. Students with learning differences are more than twice as likely to be suspended as those who do not. The dropout rate for students with LD or learning differences is 18.1%, is nearly 3 times the rate of all students. More than half, 55% of young adults with LD have been involved with the justice system, and low self-esteem and stigma help explain why 1 in 4 students with learning differences don't tell their college they have a disability, and why only 1 in 20 young adults with LD receive accommodations in the workplace. So, Choice, the stats that I just read are discouraging. Do you want to comment on them before we get into the meat of our discussion?
I agree. Yeah, they are definitely discouraging. And what's one of the biggest things is there is such a huge percentage of children as well as adults who go undiagnosed with a learning difference or who are misdiagnosed with um, other disorders or disabilities other than a learning disability, such as ADD or ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important that like you said, you got to research. You have to know what it is that you're looking for, number one, but um, understand the importance of getting a diagnosis, a proper diagnosis.
Right. Yep. So ADHD and dyslexia are like the most recognized learning differences, but can you give me and my listeners some others that are maybe not as well known or recognized?
As a learning difference or a learning
Yeah.
disability? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So there are many, 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 many types of learning disabilities. First of all, a learning disability for your listeners that they do not know. Uh, there are 3 types of main learning disabilities. There's a reading disability, a written language disability, and a math disability.
Okay.
These disabilities are also broken down into 7 main types of learning disabilities, such as dyslexia, which is a
Okay.
language-based learning disability.
Okay.
There are 2 forms of dyslexia. It could be phonological as well as visual. Um,
Okay.
there's
Now wait,
also,
I got to stop you because you said
yes,
two phonological versus visual.
yes,
I don't know what
yes.
that means. So can you break
So
that down just a little bit?
phonological dyslexia is where a person has trouble breaking down words according
Okay.
to their sound.
Okay.
Visual dyslexia is where they don't recognize the sound, and their brains struggle to remember what the words look like.
Okay. Got it.
And outside of dyslexia, there's also dysgraphia. Dysgraphia is a learning difference, where difficulty with writing.
Okay.
Um, then you have dyscalculia, and dyscalculia is a struggle with math.
Okay.
And then you have also um, like auditory processing disorders, language processing disorders, nonverbal and verbal. Um, and some of these learning differences, as I like to call them, or
Mm-hmm.
disabilities as they are known as, they all have, or I would say not all of them, but some of them have similarities to similar symptoms to ADHD, which is
Okay.
where some students or people may be misdiagnosed or diagnosed with one and not the other,
Got
because
it.
they do show similar symptoms. Um,
So you can have multiple learning
mhm.
differences. Okay.
You definitely can have multiple learning differences.
Okay. So how do they, if I'm a parent, because like I wasn't even aware of half of what you just said, like seriously. I really like all of the how it break. Like dyslexia to me was, oh, I flipped the numbers. Like I made a 6 a 9 or I made a B a
Hmm.
D. I wasn't really aware that it was broken down into those different subsets. So how can a
Hmm.
parent, um, how do they show up in real life? Like uh, you have a kid who may have multiple learning differences. How would it show up in their, I guess, their schooling or their interactions in school?
If they could, which is why sometimes it is seen as, it could be, a child could be diagnosed with ADHD versus a learning difference, because a children may show signs such as um, attention issues, poor executive functioning issues, behavior issues,
Mhm.
um, having a hard time focusing. Sometimes they, um, and all of those to say are also symptoms of ADHD. But when you think about having a learning difference, it not only plays on your physical abilities, it also plays on your mental abilities.
Okay.
Um, and so those are things that parents have to look out for, or when your child no longer wants to go to school, or they don't want to do homework, or for a
Mhm.
child it takes an extremely long time to do homework, they may have a processing disorder,
Okay.
and how they process the work, and their speed that it takes for them to process. Or
Okay.
for a student with dyslexia, they also have memory issues. And so when it comes to how their brains are processing, um, it may slow them down in completing the work that they need to complete.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. So how are these in your opinion, how are learning differences best diagnosed?
Number one, it take a parent truly have to advocate for their child and making sure that they get the proper diagnosis. What schools do is they use different types of testing and evaluations to
Mhm.
test the child's psychological ability and processing and learning.
Okay.
These tests can be done by school psychologists. It can be done by school clinical psychologists, or some special educators can also um, do the testing and evaluating as well. So I recommend that any parent who believes or has any type of feeling that their child is struggling academically, they want to speak with their children's teacher, and they want to ask that their children be evaluated. That's where it
Okay.
starts.
Okay. And how early should that begin?
Early. The
Oh,
earlier, the better.
got it.
Elementary school.
Okay.
Um, because if they're
Kindergarten?
uh, kin it's kind of tricky when you say kindergarten, because
Hmm.
that is when you look at 5 and 6 year olds,
Okay.
and you look at their attention,
Hmm.
um, it gets kind of tricky, because five
Right.
and 6 year olds are not going to sit still.
Right.
And that's where it could be a learning difference. But then
Right.
they will look at it like, maybe this child just has ADD or ADHD. Their
Right.
attention, they're not able to focus, they're not able to sit still. So you can get an evaluation as early as kindergarten. Um, and then as they grow, as they progress in age, and as they progress in grade, then
Hmm.
you will get reevaluated to see
Okay.
where they are. But
Okay.
you want to first send a request. A parent will want to first send a request to their teacher to discuss their concerns,
Okay.
so that the teacher can begin observing the child, so that the teacher can also share work and review the work. And the teacher will also meet with special educators, as well as those, um, the counselor and the psychologist and the um, clinical psychologist as well, um, to begin the evaluation process.
Okay. Now,
And you want to do, and sorry to cut you off,
no
but
problem.
you want to always put your concerns in writing. So
Okay.
you can definitely speak to your children's teacher, but you want to, when you want to begin the process, you
Document.
must put it in you yes, you
Yeah.
must document it. It's best to send a letter to the school
Hmm.
to have that documented. That way there's a record
Okay.
of
Got
when you made the request, and then that's when the school has to start moving
Right.
in a timely manner to get these evaluations done, to do all these observations and things like that.
Okay. And how much do you believe that the teachers that are with these kids 8 hours a day, how much do they bear um, some of the weight of connecting with the kids and saying, okay, this child is not um, grasping things the way the majority of the class is, and speaking to the parents? Because when I was growing up, labeling of kids with
Mm.
learning differences was not a good thing,
Yes.
especially in the BIPOC or African American community. It kind
Hmm.
of sent them down a path that wasn't in, because my mom, my grandmom, and my aunt were all teachers, and they to them labeling was like the worst thing.
Yes.
But
Yes, I agree. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because especially in the African American community, we look at labels, and first thing that we will say, especially if the label is coming from someone of another
mhm, mhm,
color,
mhm,
is, you're not going to label my child.
right.
And by doing that, we sometimes miss all the signs that are there. I had to learn as well, as a parent with a child with a learning difference, that
Mhm,
I had to remove my feelings of what they were saying, and I
right.
had to look at all of the pieces that made this big puzzle.
Mhm,
And to answer your question, the teachers bear a lot. They bear a lot. And when we look at these schools, sometimes you have one teacher to 23, 25 kids,
mhm,
and
mhm,
it's hard for them to miss the mark. Um, some teachers are not, most teachers, if they're not um, educated in special education,
mhm,
they may also miss the signs.
right.
They may look at it more so not as a learning difference, but as ADHD. because
Mhm.
what they're seeing is they have a classroom full of kids. They have this one child or two children, or say 5 out of the 25. Um, 3 of those 5 that are not paying attention could be all over the place. 2
Mhm.
of them are unruly and causing havoc in their classrooms, and all they're trying to do is teach the curriculum that
Right.
they are required to teach. So
Right.
sometimes it's missed, depending on how close the teacher are to the kids, as well
Mhm.
as how big the classroom sizes are and the demands of educators. I learned very early um, to sympathize with educators and all
Yeah.
that they do, and this was
Yeah.
pre-pandemic.
Right.
Pandemic and after pandemic really opened our eyes as parents of
Yeah.
what teachers are required in the demands of being an educator. But
Mhm.
for me, prior to all of that, I volunteered a lot in my child's school. And
Okay.
so I will go into the classrooms. I will see what the teachers were up against, and I would talk to my child, and I would let him know, if you sit in the back of the classroom, you don't raise your hand, you don't participate, the teacher's not really going to pay attention to you. The
Right.
teacher is going to pay attention to those students that, ooh, 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 I got the answer. Those who want to be there, or those who know it, because those kids show them that they're getting the curriculum that the teacher is teaching.
Right.
But those kids that are struggling, those
Right.
kids that are quiet, those kids that that have the behavior issues,
Mhm.
sometimes it's missed because the teacher's focus is not necessarily on what is causing them
Right.
to have.
They're just looking at the bad behavior.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Got it. Got it. Got it. So I gotta ask, do you, in your personal opinion, believe that BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color children are more often mislabeled with ADHD or a learning difference?
Yes,
And
I
why do you
definitely
think
do.
that is?
I think it's because of our culture. I think
Mm,
it's because of our environment, and what our children, our African American children, bring with them into the classrooms. I think as African Americans, we are all misdiagnosed in some type of way, or
okay.
treated indifferent when it comes to a diagnosis, whether it's ADHD, a learning difference, cancer,
Hmm.
and how we're treated
Right.
based on those diagnoses.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
Right.
When it comes to our African American children and how they are diagnosed with learning differences and ADHD, it has also a lot to do with education
Hmm.
and what we as parents know
Right.
and how we were raised. We go back to how you said your grandmother and your mother are educators, but
Hmm.
I can remember when I was young and I struggled in school, and my teacher told my mom that she was going to keep me back.
Mm,
And my mother wouldn't allow that.
right.
So my mother showed me advocacy very early on, and I didn't realize that at a young age, but I
Hmm.
seen her go to bat for me. You're going to test her, you're going to evaluate her, you're going to show me why you feel like this is what she needs to be held back.
Right.
And if it doesn't line up, it's not going to happen. I
Right.
found myself doing the exact same thing for my son. I had to educate myself, and I
Hmm.
had to go into the rooms that I was entering with knowledge,
Yes.
not with attitude,
Or
not with
emotion.
fight or emotion. I
Hmm.
had to remove my emotions, and I had to step into the room asking the questions that I needed to ask. I had to be specific with the things that I seen, because in the beginning for me, um, I went along with what they were telling me, because as
Right.
parents, we feel like the educators know.
No
That's what
better. Hmm.
they know better. This is what
Hmm.
you are hired to do. And I'm, as a mother, thinking you have my child's best interest at heart because you are the teacher.
Right.
But I realized that not all teachers know. Not
Hmm.
all teachers are educated themselves in these these differences
Mm-hmm.
or the signs that a child may have. And sometimes it's just overwhelming for them.
Yeah.
And when we have go ahead, I'm sorry.
And when you have huge class sizes, it doesn't help.
hmm It
So
meant you missed the mark.
you miss all the
Yeah.
time, and it's unfortunate. So my question to you is, how can school systems across the board do better at meeting the needs of kids with learning differences?
I
How can
think
they do better?
every educator needs to be educated on what it is so that they know what they are looking for. I
Okay.
also think that the whole school system needs to change, and they need to be, and this is again my opinion,
Hmm.
um, inside of the box learning does not work for everyone. And
Amen.
I learned that you have to meet a child where they are. You can't
Amen.
expect for every child to learn the exact same way. And you have to understand, just as educators, as we are trying to teach them what it is that we want to learn. Just how we have to learn to teach them, they have to learn how to learn what we're teaching them. And
Right.
you can't put everybody in the same
Right.
category and same box. And that's sometimes where the behaviors come from. Because
Hmm.
when a child doesn't feel heard, then they're
Hmm.
acting out. When a
Yep.
child is being overstimulated or understimulated, or they're not being taught enough, they act out because it may be uninterested to them. And so
Hmm.
for me, I think the school systems need to change the way they do things. And parents need to speak up more.
Hmm.
We are one huge community. And I'm a firm believer across the board, whether it's in my home, in the community, in schools, it takes a village. And we have to work together as a team and not just one person controlling how everything is done. And we're
Right.
not meeting the needs of every child.
Every child. So let me ask you
Every.
this. In a perfect world, if you had it to set up, what would a school system look like that
Oh, that's
works
a
for
great
every
question.
child? What would it look like? Because let me tell you what it would look like for me. It would look like smaller class sizes,
Agree.
class sizes with children grouped by the way they learn. So some people are visual learners, some
hmm
people are auditory learners, some
hmm
people they can read and learn. And I think
Some
if
people
you,
need to touch to
yes, or
learn. Some people
tactile
work with their
learners,
hand,
yes, yes,
kinesthetic learners.
yes,
And that's very important. I'm glad you mentioned that because that is also important for a parent, a child, and an educator to be able to help that child know what their learning profile is.
yes,
What is your learning type? How do you learn? And
yep,
some people may have all of them, but need to use them differently in different areas. So, for a student who has dyslexia, say
hmm,
for instance, they struggle with reading, they struggle with writing, they struggle with spelling, they struggle with language based learning. So
okay,
that student may be more hands on
hmm,
when it comes to needing to do certain assignments.
right,
But at the same time, they may be visual learners when it comes to you have to know what your learning profile is and what works best for you.
right,
I'm a firm believer of using your strengths to build your weaknesses and
yes, I like that,
using your weaknesses to be able to help you identify what your strengths are, because sometimes we get caught up with I can't do because of our
right,
struggles, and
right,
then we lose sight of what we can do. But using your strengths to build your weaknesses and knowing that we are all unique,
yeah,
we all do things differently, we learn differently, we process differently, we act different, even with similarities.
right,
And I want kiddos to know that. I want educators to know that and parents to know that.
yeah,
Don't treat everyone the same.
right.
Don't, we
Even in the
have,
same house.
even in the same house, we may have a similar foundation, but how we build on that foundation may look different.
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate because I'm sure people are gonna hear this and be like, "Well, that'll never work. That'll cost so much money to have a system set up like this." And because I believe that the entire uh, curriculum test based method of learning just doesn't work. Because here's what I know: there are children who know the material but don't test well,
Exactly.
and there are children who don't know the material but test well.
Because they
So,
memorize.
hmm
Mm-hmm.
so when we're having these conversations about how can the school systems be better, I get that it is economics. There are some
Mm-hmm.
school systems that have the ability to put the kind of individualized curriculums and classrooms in place more than others. And again, we circle back to, you know, marginalized communities where the educational dollars are not the same as other communities.
Mm-hmm.
So
Correct. Yeah, correct. Um, yeah. Like us.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have some communities that do have the money, but it's not allocated the way it's supposed to.
Right.
Um, Number one, I when you ask me um, what will be a perfect school,
Hmm.
um, I think first, I mean, we got to start with baby steps, but
Yeah.
I think smaller classroom sizes make a huge
Yes.
that makes a huge difference.
Yes.
And I understand, especially now after we're coming out of the pandemic and we see the struggles with staffing, educators, staffing, the clinicals, um, filling the positions for
Hmm.
those clinical positions that are needed. We see that
Yeah.
now that we're coming out of the pandemics. But it is important to be able to reach every child.
Yeah.
And it's just impossible for educators when they have overpopulated classrooms.
Yes. I agree. I agree 100%. As when I was in school, I think there were 15 people in my class, and that was a lot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But now it's 20, 25.
Hmm.
I-
25
How can
and
one
one
teacher in one
teacher.
day
Yeah.
manage
And
that?
that's and sometimes there may be a TA in the classroom, TA
Hmm.
being a teacher assistant, but
Hmm.
then that teacher assistant may be assigned as a one-on-one with a student that has a learning difference or a um, behavioral what's called a BIP, a behavioral intervention plan, and
Hmm.
may need one-on-one, and so
Hmm.
that still makes it hard for the
Hard.
for
Yeah.
the teacher,
Yeah.
even if there is an extra person in the classroom. So if they were able to have smaller classroom sizes, as well as co-teachers in classroom in every
Hmm.
classroom, I think that will help. Smaller groups,
Absolutely.
and teaching kids where they learn,
And
and don't dismiss them.
and how about you pay your teachers more?
Mm,
How about that? And
mm.
then you might not have such a shortage of qualified teachers.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Like have breakouts where there can be maybe there's one big class, but then there's breakouts where the kids who learn this way are here and this way here and this way over here. You know what I mean?
I do, I do. Yeah.
So, ma'am, talk to me about Beautiful Minds LLC. Tell me the why, the what, the how of what you do.
All right. So Beautiful Minds LLC is a educational therapy, advocacy, and consulting company that
Hmm.
I started in 2019. I formed this company because I wanted to, as a parent, again, with a student with a learning difference, um, I um, weathered the storms of special education and learning special education and
Mm-hmm.
understanding special education. And I seen the struggles that my child had in the classrooms in public schools. I pulled him from public and put him in private
Okay.
for him to be able to get be able to for him to be able to be taught in a way that he need
Yeah.
needed to learn. And I seen that wasn't happening in the public schools. I'm not knocking public schools. I'm not against public schools. It
Hmm.
works for some and it doesn't work for everyone. And it wasn't working for my child.
Right.
And so I formed Beautiful Minds as a way for me to not only work with kids with learning differences and be able to help them to see their uniqueness, to
Hmm.
build them emotionally, physically, mentally, and learning in a way that was best for them. I
Right.
also wanted to educate parents and help them to understand that they weren't alone. Because when you go into these meetings, IEP meetings, 504
Yeah. Yeah.
meetings, it's a lot. It's emotional. It's confusing,
Hmm.
and you walk in there defeated. You walk out defeated. And I
Mm.
didn't want other parents to feel the way that I felt. And I felt the most confident when I educated myself.
Yeah.
And the more that I learned, I wanted to be able to teach other people so
Hmm.
that they also would be able to walk into these meetings, walk into the classrooms of their children and be confident that their child is going to get the best education for them and they're going to get the support and the accommodations that they need. Um, and so that's why I formed it.
Okay.
Um, and yeah, and I'm just looking for it to continue to grow because I see as I'm helping other people, other families, they are also able to help other families, um, and that's what it's about, you
Right.
know. That's what it's
Yep.
about.
I love it. I love it. So somebody's listening to this podcast and they're like, number one, we need to break down the stigma about having learning differences because
Mhm.
most people have some learning difference. And I love that you call it a difference because it's not a disability. It's just
No,
different. I just learned different.
exactly.
Um, so somebody reaches out to Beautiful Minds, what can they expect from you? Because I don't know, a lot of stuff is state specific, right?
Hmm.
But there are some things that are universal. So what do they get from you? Like a parent that's listening and they hit you up. What can they expect from you? Besides,
Understanding.
okay.
Understanding. They can expect encouragement. They can expect motivation. They can expect support. They can expect someone that they can just lean on and not feel like they are going through this alone.
Okay.
Everything I do from uh, Beautiful Minds perspective, whether it's from the educational side or whether it's from the grieving side, is always to encourage those that I work with, that I'm dealing with, and knowing that you are not in this alone,
Okay.
and that there is someone out there that's going to support you and walk with you along the way. What No matter if you're in Maryland, where I am, if you're in DC, Virginia, or any other states, I take pride in educating myself on the rights of a parent, the rights that parents have in the area that they are in, as
Okay.
well as the right of their children. That way, you know what applies to you. I know the information that I'm giving you applies to you where you are. And I
Right.
don't have all the answers, but
Right.
I do take pride in finding those answers and helping you to find those answers. Here, where I am, I serve families in the DMV area, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, and
Okay.
I go to IEP meetings. And I sit there in those meetings and I support you. I meet with you before those meetings. We have consults before the meeting to, if you need me to help you review your children's IEP, to help you
Mhm.
get a better understanding with all that mumbo jumbo, all
Yeah.
those words that they throw on the paper. Sometimes
Hmm.
it's like, and some
Overwhelming.
children's IEPs are huge,
Yeah.
depending on their needs,
Right.
depending on their accommodations. And so I support you in that way in helping you to understand the IEP, understanding the um, what supports and accommodations and modifications that are out there, and just giving to you what it is that you are lacking as a parent that I'm able to give you as a parent myself with a child with a learning difference, as well as a professional.
Right. Now, your company works with parents with children in public and private schools?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I'm going to circle back real quick because you pulled your child from public school and put him
I
in
did.
private. And I wanted to just get a little bit of understanding about why that was. Was that because the public school was not willing or able to accommodate your?
I did not feel like they were able to
Okay.
accommodate. I seen the light leave my child's eyes.
Got it.
And not only was he being bullied by his peers, he was being bullied by his by his by the educators, by the
Mm,
teachers,
okay.
and he lost all confidence. It was a struggle to get him up in the mornings to get him to go to school. It was
Right.
hard to encourage him because he didn't trust and believe in the words that I was saying to him because he was hearing so many negative words elsewhere.
Got
I
it.
pulled him from the public school because I felt like they weren't able to provide him with the education that he needed. After trying, don't get me wrong,
Right.
chance after chance after chance, and you just get to a point where it's just like, at what point do you realize that it's not working?
Right.
And before anything was to happen to my child, I felt like I needed to put him in a place that was going to help relight the fire inside of him.
Hmm.
He
Right.
had lost confidence in himself, as I said. He was no longer motivated. He no longer loved his favorite subjects. He no longer wanted to go to school. And
Right.
it was a struggle as a parent to watch that. And
Yeah.
once I would put him in a school that specialized in teaching kiddos with learning differences,
Okay.
a little at a time, the
The
light
light came back.
began
Yeah.
to come back on. And it took some time. And
Right.
he's a senior now in high school,
Okay.
um, and about to graduate. And I've watched his journey because, of course, I'm walking this journey with him.
Right.
But I see how each grade things look different. And not
Right.
only did he had to find his passion for learning again, we had to rebuild his confidence.
Yeah.
And we're still working on that because that's a part of what I do with Beautiful Minds. People don't realize that students with learning differences, they're not only struggling academically, they're struggling emotionally,
Hmm.
they're struggling mentally because
Hmm.
they're different. They're
Yep.
learning different and they look different. They
Mm.
act different. And
Right.
that plays a factor, especially in this world that we live in where
Yeah.
everybody want to be the same, where
Right.
social media makes you feel like being different, there's something wrong with you. And
Yes.
so, yes, that's
Okay.
why I did what I did for my child. And I feel like that was the best move ever for
Yeah.
him.
And sometimes that's you have to do absolutely what's best for your kid and anybody that's listening. That's a
Yeah.
takeaway. I mean,
Yeah.
public schools are amazing. Like I said, I'm generations in public school education. So, but it's not always or can't
It
always
doesn't.
be the best thing for every kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
You have to
um,
know what their needs are.
absolutely,
And if
and that
they're not being provided with that, then you have to do what's best for them.
absolutely, and parents that are listening to this, if you don't know the signs, if you don't know, like you're looking at your kid in the way that they interact even with their toys or the little books that you give them, and you think there's a problem, reach out and get help so you can learn how they learn. Once you learn how they learn, then you can explain that to other people.
Yes, exactly.
So, Miss Choyce Simmons, and I love your name, by the way.
Thank
Um,
you.
can you give me some last thoughts for my listeners in reference to learning differences to the parents that are going to listen to this? What would you like to leave them with?
Um, I would like for a parent to know that it's okay that you don't know everything, but also understand that you, as the parents, have rights. You have rights as well as your children. They have rights to a free education.
Hmm.
Sometimes it doesn't seem as if you're getting anywhere within your school systems, but keep pushing,
Hmm.
keep asking questions, keep going to the people who you need to go to get the answers that you get in order for your children to get what it is that they need. I want people to also understand that any student or person with a learning difference, they don't go away.
Hmm.
You just learn the tools to be able to function better within your learning difference. um, and start early.
Hmm.
Don't take no for an answer. I had so many no's that I had to turn them into yeses. I was persistent because my child is my life. And
Right.
so have have the understanding that I don't want any parent to think that they don't have the right to speak up and advocate for their child, because they do. Um, and that's exactly what they should do. But I
Okay.
want to say to our African American community, don't look at the stereotype.
Hmm.
Don't get caught up on the labels.
Hmm.
Understand and educate yourself on what you need to know so that you are better able to communicate with the educators and the admins and those people that are in the school that make the decisions in the school system for your
Right.
children. Fight, but fight fair, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Fight,
It
but fight
absolutely does.
fair. Is there's a way that you fight, and you don't have to go in there uh, guns a blazing, ready to cut
Right.
people up and things like that. You have to know how to how to fight fair. I don't know if you're going to edit that.
Oh, you know I'm not.
But truly, you have to fight fair, and know that I say fight fair, but let me be clear on that. You
Right.
don't have to fight if you really know what you
What
need
you
to
know.
know.
Yeah. Amen.
And if you need the support, get the support. I have
Yeah.
plenty parents who have told me, once I start working with them, that when I start going to IEP meetings with them, that they felt different. And
Hmm.
not only did they feel different, other people in the room acted differently.
Hmm.
So if there's free support out there,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to pay, um, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Because your kid is worth it and you are their
Exactly.
advocate. So,
And
Miss
teach your kid
Choice,
to advocate for themselves
yes,
as
as
well.
they get
I,
older,
I
absolutely.
as they get older, I will leave them with that as well. Teach your kids to advocate for themselves as well, because we're not always going to be with them. And they
That's right.
have to be able to speak up for themselves and tell
Yep.
people, whether they're in elementary school, middle school, high school, young adult to old adult. They have to
Yep.
be able to tell people what their needs are. So if they
Yes.
have a learning difference and they need special accommodations or modifications,
Hmm.
they need to be able to say that. They need to be able to speak up and ask for help. It is nothing wrong
Yep.
with asking for help.
No
Not you, parent,
shame.
and not you, kids. There's
Yep.
no shame in asking for help, because we can't do it by
That's right.
ourselves.
Amen. Thank you so much. And listen,
You're
how
so welcome.
can my listeners connect with you in Beautiful Minds?
So you can email me at, I have such a long email address. I don't know why. Oh gosh, you can
Mm.
connect with me by email, which is beautiful minds with an S, ccllc@gmail.com. You can
Okay.
reach me on Facebook at my name, Choice with a Y,
Mm.
Simmons. You can also contact me by phone. I'm just a phone call away. 240 no, 240-780-8535. Um, and yeah, those are easy ways that you can contact me.
Okay. Oh, Choice, thank you. Listen, this is such an important conversation. I have a nephew that has learning differences. My grandson has learning differences. I believe my granddaughter, my youngest granddaughter, does too. So,
Yeah.
um,
And
I,
just to tell you, it's hereditary. A lot of
mm,
people don't know that. If one has it, it's because somewhere down our generational line, someone had it.
right.
I had it at a younger age. My
Yep.
son's dad had it at a younger age, which ultimately it shows because our child has it. And
It
so
shows.
it's a know your history, know your family history, your family medical history is also
Yep.
very important.
Agreed. Thank you. That was awesome. Thank you for that. That was a good reminder. Because sometimes you got to go back and ask grandma, like,
Hmm.
did you, I noticed in like your recipe books, there's like things flipped around. They were, you know, dyslexic
Hmm.
or whatever. But back then, because of the stigma and the shame around it, people just didn't really talk
Exactly.
about it.
That is
So,
so true. So true. And nor did they like labels.
nor did they
Nor
like
did yeah,
labels.
nor did they like labels.
Yeah, yeah. Because
Yeah,
for a long time in the school system, labels weren't a good thing. At least not for African American children. They weren't.
correct.
It just kind of put them into this short yellow bus box, and
Hmm.
they the special education system was not very good. I think it's
Yeah.
getting better, but I think the school system, public school systems as a whole, have a long way to go.
They
Um,
really, really do. And I tell young people, and I'm pretty sure we've heard it as well. It's not what they call you, it's what you answer to. And
Amen.
I had to start helping parents to also see that they look at it like they're not going to label my child. And I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. I've told parents if that's the label that they want to give them in order for you to get the services that your child need, then you take that label because that's
Right,
what's written on paper, and you
right.
get all the services, accommodation, and modifications that your child need, and
Absolutely.
understand that there's always going to be a reevaluation. And as a parent, you have the right to call any type of meeting if you have any type of concerns,
Yep.
as well as you have the right to ask that documents are amended and
Yes.
changed. So
Yes.
if they start off by saying, which is what they did for my child, because I was once to a parent that said, you're not going to label my child. Because when I
Mm-hmm.
told them that he had dyslexia, they said he had ADHD. But I
Mm-hmm.
knew that it wasn't that. But then
Right.
I had to change my thinking. I had to change the way I looked at it. And I also had to look at it like, okay, do he? Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
see something that I am not ready to see. So let me
Right.
see what they're talking about, but let me also make sure I reiterate and that they understand that this is what I see as a parent. So we're going to
Right.
look at both sides. We're not going to just
Right.
look at your side. But
Right.
if saying that he has this is what it takes for him to get the help that he needs in the
Yep.
classroom, then okay. But
Okay.
when that changes, then documents change.
Yes. Yes. I agree. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, ma'am. This has
You're
been
so
an
welcome.
amazing chat. And listen, guys, I know her contact info is long, so you already know it's all going to be in the show notes with clickable links so you can reach
Yes.
to I am not going to put your phone number in the show notes, but I
Okay.
will put your email and your Facebook, and people can reach out to you there. um,
Okay, that's great.
so yeah, guys, listen, Choice Simmons, thank you so much for what you do. um, with grief and grieving and as an educational therapist. That intersection is amazing to me, and I appreciate what you do, what you've done for your son, and what you are doing for other parents with children with learning differences. People, they're just differences, not disabilities.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Chris, and I really appreciate you taking the time out to speak with me on this topic because it is necessary, and it's a topic that we all have to continue to talk about um, moving forward when it comes to how we educate our children.
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be able to speak to your listeners and educate them and be able to serve them and help them in whatever ways that they need help. So
Awesome.
thank you.
All right, y'all. So if any of you have children, because listen, the children truly are our future. Long after
Mhm.
you and I are gone, they'll be here, and we want them to be the best versions of themselves. And that starts with how they learn and being able to learn how they learn so they can learn. Oh, I like
Exactly. I love that too.
that. So thank you, ma'am, so very, very much. And listen, guys, again, Choice's contact information, Beautiful Minds, Facebook information will be in the show notes. I want you guys to don't forget to visit my website at www.thekandidshop.com, Candid with a K, and Choice is Choice, Choyce. So if you're searching for her, don't spell choice the regular way because it's different. Um, so go over, pop over to the website, check out a few episodes. Choice was on the grief and grieving episode, which was amazing. So
Thank you.
subscribe to the show, share the show, make sure you're following the show on Facebook, IG, and TikTok at the Candid Shop Podcast. And until the next time, y'all know I want you to do what? Keep it safe, keep it healthy, and keep it candid.